My sister's squeal of delight cut through the Christmas morning air as she twirled BMW keys in her manicured hand, while in my lap sat a $2.00 piggy bank. The living room sparkled with soft white lights threaded through the pine branches, but their glow did little to warm me. My father's words lingered, tossed carelessly as if they were harmless. "You'll always be fine without our help." He didn't know, or maybe didn't care, how that phrase had branded itself across my life. I forced myself to smile, my cheeks aching under the strain, while the rest of the family crowded around Lila. She spun the keys again, her blonde hair catching the glow of the tree as if she were some kind of chosen star. My mother clasped her hands beneath her chin, eyes brimming with pride. Outside, parked in the snowy driveway, gleamed a white BMW wrapped in a red bow so large it could have been mistaken for the centerpiece of the holiday itself. In my lap, the piggy bank felt cheap and hollow, a cartoonish plastic thing in bright colors, faded as though pulled from a clearance bin. When I pried open the stopper, 2 crisp dollar bills fluttered onto my jeans. My father chuckled. "That's the start of your home fund," he said with a wave, as though $2 were enough to build anything beyond resentment. The scent of cinnamon rolls wafted from the kitchen, but my stomach refused to settle. My throat tightened as I thought of the gifts I had brought. A leather briefcase for my father, a silver bracelet my mother had admired, a camera lens for Lila. Each had been bought with hours of overtime, small sacrifices stitched together. I had rehearsed in my car, driving down from Seattle, how I would tell them about my promotion to senior structural engineer. I had imagined their faces lighting up with pride. Now, in the shadow of the BMW, those dreams crumbled like brittle wrapping paper. I glanced at the family photos lining the wall. Lila's smile beamed from every frame. Soccer trophies, art showcases, lavish birthday parties. My images were fewer, often in the background, holding something practical, never center stage. My mother finally turned toward me, brushing her pearl necklace with careful fingers. "Lila needs reliable transportation for her clients. You understand." Her tone made it clear I was expected to nod, to agree, to be the responsible one. Lila sank onto the couch beside me, perfume sharp and sweet, patting my knee. "Don't worry, sis," she said, voice soft but cutting. "I'll drive you around if your Toyota ever gives up. I mean, it's ancient." I wanted to tell her that my Toyota had carried me over mountain passes, through storms, across years of hard-earned miles. I wanted to remind her that I had paid it off myself. Instead, silence pressed against my ribs. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting shadows that seemed too long, too cold for the warmth the room pretended to hold. My chest tightened, memories flooding. My 5th birthday with a simple sheet cake, my graduation with empty seats in the family row, always explained away. "You're more independent. You don't need us." I placed the piggy bank on the glass coffee table. Its hollow thud echoed louder than the laughter around me. "Excuse me," I whispered, rising before my composure shattered. The hallway was lined with stockings, each stuffed full. Mine sagged with practical things: socks, pens, a gas card. Upstairs, I slipped into the bathroom, locking the door with trembling fingers. My reflection stared back. Too composed, too dry-eyed. I pressed my palms to the marble counter, willing the tears to come. Instead, a heavy ache spread through my chest, as if concrete were setting in my lungs. I could hear Lila downstairs, already planning her first road trip in the BMW. Their voices blurred together, a chorus of pride and excitement that excluded me once again. I leaned closer to the mirror, studying the fine lines at the corners of my eyes, the weary set of my jaw. Years of swallowing disappointment had etched themselves into my face. Something shifted inside me then, sharp and irrevocable. I thought of the countless nights I had stayed late at the office, designing structures meant to last generations. Yet in this family I was still temporary, replaceable, invisible. The laughter from below rose, then faded as I pressed my back against the door, my fists clenched. This wasn't a single slight. It was the sum of decades, stacked like bricks, until the wall between us was insurmountable. I inhaled deeply, the scent of old pine-scented cleaner filling my nose, grounding me. My decision formed quietly but firmly, like steel locking into place. I would not stay here waiting for them to see me. I would not continue feeding a bond that gave nothing back. 34 years of diminishment hardened into one decision. Tonight I would walk out and never return. At 2:17 a.m., I slipped my house key onto the kitchen counter, the sound louder than thunder in the sleeping house. The kitchen smelled faintly of the coffee my mother would brew in a few hours, the same ritual she'd performed every morning of my childhood. I paused, the cold metal key resting against the polished counter, and let the silence wash over me. On the wall above hung a calendar with family notes scribbled in my mother's neat cursive. Doctor's appointments for Dad, reminders about Lila's client meetings. Not a single mention of me. It was as if I lived in another orbit, acknowledged only when convenient. I pulled the strap of my suitcase higher on my shoulder and walked through the dim hallway. The photos I had glanced at earlier seemed to glare at me now. Lila is in costumes with trophies, and my parents' arms are wrapped tightly around her. My own face appeared here and there, smaller, distant, often cut off at the edge of the frame. By the time I reached the door, the air in the house felt suffocating. Outside, the December night hit me with icy air sharp enough to sting my lungs. Snow was falling in lazy spirals, settling across the roof of my old Toyota. The car looked worn, its paint dull under the porch light, but it felt like the only honest companion I had. I loaded my suitcase, slid into the driver's seat, and turned the ignition. The engine coughed awake, the heater struggling against the bitter cold. The roads stretched ahead, slick and empty. Portland slept behind me as the wipers swished steadily, clearing streaks of white from the windshield. I drove past houses glowing with Christmas lights, each one a reminder of the holiday I was abandoning. For the first hour my chest felt tight, as if invisible hands pressed me back toward the house I had fled. Then, like air seeping slowly into collapsed lungs, relief began to spread. Halfway through the mountain pass, a semi roared past me, spraying slush so thick it blinded me. My heart hammered as the windshield turned white. For 3 seconds, I saw nothing but blur. My grip tightened until my knuckles burned, steering blind until the wipers cleared a narrow view. When the road came back into focus, my shoulders shook with the aftershock. I'd nearly lost everything in an instant. The radio hummed faintly with Bing Crosby's voice before I reached over and twisted the knob, silencing even that. The quiet felt more truthful. Snow thickened, miles stretching endlessly, until a neon glow appeared in the distance. A small diner sat at the edge of a highway exit, its sign blinking open against the dark. I pulled into the lot, my tires crunching over frozen gravel. Inside, warmth wrapped around me like an unexpected embrace. The scent of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. A waitress with silver-streaked hair approached, her name tag reading Evelyn. Without asking, she poured coffee into a chipped white mug and set it before me. Her voice was steady, kind. "A rough night?" I stared into the dark liquid, words failing me. "Rough life," I muttered, embarrassed by the crack in my voice. Evelyn didn't flinch. She slid a laminated menu across the table and rested her hand lightly on mine. "Family or boyfriend?" "Family," I said, the word tasting bitter. She nodded knowingly. "Blood makes you related. Love and respect make you family." Then she moved on to the next table, as if she'd only dropped off truth as casually as coffee. I sat in that booth for longer than I meant to, nursing the warmth in my hands, letting her words echo in my chest. When I finally stood, my legs felt steadier. I paid the bill, leaving a tip larger than my meal, and stepped back into the snow. Not long after, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. Rachel's name glowed across the screen. My college roommate, my friend who had seen enough of my family to understand without explanation. I pressed the answer button, my voice hollow. "Somewhere in southern Oregon, heading south." There was silence, then her tone turned firm. "Come to San Francisco, stay with me. Family doesn't treat you like that." "I can't impose. Stop." Her voice cut through my hesitation. You've spent your whole life being the helper. Let someone help you for once." Her words cracked something open inside me, like light seeping through shutters I hadn't realized were closed. Help! Such a small word, and yet one I had rarely been allowed to claim. When the call ended, I eased the car back onto the highway. Snow continued to fall, but for the first time since leaving Portland, my grip on the wheel loosened. As dawn broke over the California border, I silenced every call from my parents and sister and kept driving south. Rachel's arms wrapped around me at her apartment door, the first embrace in years that felt like home. The city smelled different from Portland. Salt from the bay mingling with the tang of morning fog. As I stepped into Rachel's apartment, the warmth hit me first, then the sight of terracotta-colored walls catching the light. The spare room she had prepared glowed softly, as if it had been waiting for me. I set down my suitcase, a hollow feeling pressing against my chest. I had left behind everything familiar, yet here a new beginning hummed quietly under the surface. Rachel handed me a mug of coffee, steam curling into the air. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," she said, studying me with concern. I managed to smile, though the weight of exhaustion clung to my bones. "Feels longer," I replied. She didn't press for details, she never had to. She had witnessed my family's patterns years ago. Holidays spent alone, packages of necessities arriving, while my sister posted photos from Aspen. Later that morning, I opened my laptop at her small kitchen table, the screen glowing against the dim fog outside. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Dear Mr. Sanderson, I am writing to request a transfer to the San Francisco office." I hesitated, heart pounding, then clicked send. The decision was irreversible, yet liberating. Hours later, when the approval appeared in my inbox, I stared at it in disbelief. Just like that, I had chosen my own path, not one carved by family expectation or manipulation. That night, Rachel cooked pasta in her narrow kitchen, filling the apartment with the smell of garlic and basil. As we ate, she leaned across the table. "You're not going back, are you?" The question was gentle, but the answer felt sharp. "No, I can't." My voice didn't shake the way I thought it would. For the first time, it felt like truth rather than rebellion. 2 days later, I sat across from Dr. Miriam Blake in her office, the faint scent of lemon polish and old books wrapping around me. She wore simple glasses on a beaded chain and spoke sparingly, her silences pressing me to fill the space. At first, I stumbled, circling around my pain, until the words slipped out. Favoritism. It hung in the air, foreign yet undeniable. My throat tightened. "It's been there my entire life." Dr. Blake tilted her head, her eyes steady. "And how has that made you feel?" I swallowed hard, the truth catching like glass in my throat. Like I was worth exactly $2. The words startled me, sharp and bare. My chest ached, but a strange relief followed, as if admitting it aloud had freed something buried too deep for years. After the session, I walked through the city streets, the fog lifting to reveal sunlight glinting off the Bay Bridge. Each step felt deliberate, tethering me more to this new life. The next weekend, Rachel insisted I join her at a community pottery class. I resisted at first, embarrassed by the thought of shaping clay with strangers. Yet when my hands sank into the cool earth, something stirred. The instructor's voice was calm behind me. "Don't force it. Listen to what it wants to become." My fingers trembled as they shaped a small, uneven bowl. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was mine. For once, creation wasn't about achievement or comparison. It was about being present, shaping something fragile into existence with my own hands. Back at Rachel's apartment, I placed the bowl on the windowsill where the afternoon light hit its crooked edges. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a flicker of pride not tied to anyone else's approval. I thought of the phone calls I had ignored, the voicemail box filling with messages from my parents and sister. Their voices clamored in my head. "You're selfish. You always succeed without us. You'll regret this." Yet as I stood in Rachel's quiet kitchen, the terracotta walls glowing around me, the noise receded. I looked down at my clay-stained hands and felt something stronger than guilt, heavier than grief. It was resolved. For the first time, I began to believe that maybe freedom, not family approval, could define my worth. All conversation stopped when I stepped into the rehearsal dinner. The daughter who had disappeared at Christmas now standing in heels that echoed against the hardwood floor. The room glittered with golden light spilling from chandeliers, laughter and clinking glasses, falling silent as eyes turned toward me. For a heartbeat, I stood frozen in the doorway of Magnolia Gardens, the scent of roses from the courtyard drifting faintly inside. My black tailored pants and emerald silk blouse felt like armor, the diamond studs in my ears catching the glow. My father's drink stalled halfway to his lips, my mother's hand flew to her throat, and Leela's smile faltered as though she'd seen a ghost. I inhaled slowly, remembering the email that had arrived by accident, a seating chart placing me directly between my parents across from my sister. Even before I came home, the stage had been set to fold me back into their tableau. Tonight I intended to dismantle it. Relatives whispered as I crossed the room, heels tapping a rhythm of defiance. Some offered hugs, others murmured surprise, but the air thickened whenever I passed a family circle. I caught fragments of conversation, medical bills, whispers of my father's job loss, murmurs about debt. Reality had begun to chip away at the pedestal my parents had built. Julia, radiant in her pre-wedding glow, embraced me tightly. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. Her warmth was genuine, untainted by the undercurrents swirling around us. I clung to it briefly before moving on, keeping my smile measured, my distance firm. Dinner blurred in a haze of forced chatter. Cousin Melissa leaned over her vodka tonic, her voice low. "You wouldn't believe the drama since Christmas. Your parents are selling the house." She didn't know that I already suspected, but hearing it confirmed carried its own sting. Halfway through the evening, my father gestured toward the library. My mother rose beside him, tissues already clutched in her hand, and Lila followed reluctantly. I knew this was it. The staged intervention, the performance rehearsed for months. The library smelled of old wood and faint smoke, the fire unlit in the hearth. 3 chairs were arranged facing one, as if for a tribunal. "Sit down, Amelia," my father said, his tone firm. I remained standing at first, then calmly set my purse on the indicated chair before sitting, spine straight. My mother leaned forward. "We need to talk as a family. Your choices have hurt us deeply. Your father lost his job. I've been ill. We're selling the house because of the stress." "This isn't about my choices," I interrupted, my voice steady. From my purse, I pulled a leather-bound photo album, placing it across my lap. "It's about decades of favoritism." Flipping open the first page, I revealed side-by-side photos. Lila's princess party with pony rides, my birthday the next year with the grocery store cake at the kitchen table. My father's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous. We treated you equally." Silently, I lay out more graduation pictures with empty family seats, vacation albums where my place was replaced by Lila's European adventures. Next came bank records, my student loans totaling $67,000, alongside documents showing Lila's fully funded education and year abroad. Lila shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between the pages. "That's not fair. You chose engineering. That was your decision." "It was my passion," I replied, "just like art was yours. The difference is, mine wasn't worth investing in." My mother rose, hands trembling. "We didn't have the money then." I cut her off gently. "I know you did. Dad's promotion came when I was 16. The inheritance from Grandma arrived before my freshman year. You had the money. You chose not to spend it on me." Silence swallowed the room. My father's face flushed red. "You were always capable. We knew you'd be fine without help." The truth hit harder than any denial. Being capable had been their excuse for neglect. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. Being responsible didn't mean I deserved less love. Finally, I reached into my purse one last time. The plastic piggy bank clattered onto the table, hollow against the wood. With a twist, I emptied it, dozens of crisp $2 bills spilling out, catching the light. Gasps rippled across the room. I've saved one for every week since Christmas, I said, my voice low. Not as money, as a reminder of what you thought I was worth. Leela picked up one of the bills, turning it slowly in her hand. Her voice cracked. I never realized how it looked from your side. I stood, gathering my album and purse but leaving the bills where they lay, scattered like evidence across the table. My parents stared, speechless, the weight of the truth pressing against them. I closed the piggy bank, left its contents on the table, and walked out to take my rightful seat at the wedding, not as the invisible daughter, but as the woman who demanded respect. When my phone buzzed with Lila's confession about losing the BMW, I felt compassion, but for once, not responsibility. I sat at my small kitchen table in San Francisco, morning sunlight spilling across the terracotta walls Rachel had painted years ago. The bowl I had shaped in pottery class rested on the windowsill, its uneven edges glowing as if they held a quiet truth. My phone vibrated again, the screen lighting up with Lila's name. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was thin, stripped of its usual shine. The car, it's gone. Repossessed, clients backed out, I'm drowning. A silence hung between us, heavy with things I might once have rushed to fix. I pictured myself driving to Portland with money, offering solutions, carrying her burdens as if they were mine. The old script tugged at me, but I was no longer that sister. That sounds really hard, Lila, I said gently. I can help you put together a budget, but I can't rescue you. The words felt both foreign and freeing. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then her voice cracked. I don't know how to stand on my own. I swallowed, the ache of pity sharp in my chest. Then this is where you learn. I ended the call softly, setting the phone down beside my coffee mug. The mug's warmth seeped into my palms, reminding me that compassion didn't have to mean surrendering myself. At work, life had shifted in ways I never expected. My transfer had turned into an opportunity. My designs for a new community center had impressed the firm's senior partners. Weeks later, they promoted me to Senior Project Manager. The title glowed on the letterhead of the announcement pinned above my desk. For once, the recognition was untainted, earned without compromise or comparison. That Friday, Jonathan appeared at the office lobby with a brown paper bag in his hands. Thought you could use lunch, he said, his smile easy. We walked to the waterfront, the smell of salt and roasted coffee drifting on the breeze. I unwrapped a turkey sandwich layered with cranberry spread, a small gesture that tasted of care. He asked about my project deadlines, listening without trying to fix, simply sharing the weight. The difference was startling. Love without expectation. Saturday found me back in the pottery studio, hands sinking into clay that resisted and yielded in turn. Around me, laughter rose from classmates, shaping their own crooked vessels. The instructor, her apron dusted white, touched my shoulder. This one's balanced, she said, nodding at the vase I'd coaxed upright. I smiled faintly, tracing the smooth curve. Balance. The word lingered. That evening, Rachel gathered friends in my apartment. Engineers, artists, neighbors from down the hall. Mismatched chairs crowded around my second-hand table. Plates of roast chicken and mashed potatoes passed from hand to hand. Laughter spilled into the room, real and unstrained. For once, I didn't feel like the background figure in someone else's story. I was present at the center of a chosen family. When dessert ended, I cleared plates beside Jonathan, the clink of ceramic grounding me. You're different these days, he said quietly, brushing his hand against mine. Stronger. I met his gaze, seeing in his eyes not expectation, but respect. For the first time, I believed it. The night grew quiet after everyone left. Alone in the apartment, I sank onto the couch, phone buzzing once more. This time it wasn't Lila. It was my mother. A photo message appeared. The old dollhouse from the attic, its paint faded but still sturdy. Below is a document, deed transfer in my name. My breath caught, confusion tightening my chest. Why now? Why this? I stared at the screen. memories rising of childhood afternoons spent arranging tiny furniture in that dollhouse, the one place where I controlled the story. My mother's note beneath the photo was brief. "It always belonged to you." As Jonathan carved the turkey that Christmas, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. A photo of the old dollhouse deed in my name. 1 year after leaving with nothing but grief and a suitcase, I stood in my own apartment, surrounded by people who chose to be there. The table gleamed beneath plates of roast turkey, rosemary and sage drifting through the air, laughter rising as wine glasses clinked. My apartment, once nearly bare, had filled slowly with life. Pottery vases lined the shelves, books stacked in uneven towers, the terracotta walls glowing in the candlelight. Outside the window, the Bay Bridge glittered like a jeweled spine across the dark water. On the mantel above the heater sat the piggy bank, its cartoon face softened by shadow. It no longer mocked me. Inside it rested neat stacks of $2 bills, one for every week since I'd walked out of my parents' house. They weren't reminders of neglect anymore. They were milestones of freedom. Jonathan carved the turkey at my side, steady hands guiding the knife. Rachel passed mashed potatoes to a coworker from the firm, while a friend from pottery class poured cider into mismatched mugs. Around this table, no one measured worth in gifts or comparisons. Here, love was simple. Shared food, shared laughter, shared space. My phone buzzed against the counter. Lila's face filled the screen. I excused myself, stepping into the quieter hallway to answer. Her apartment appeared behind her, small and plain, the shine stripped from her world. She managed a tired smile. "Merry Christmas, Amelia. Your place looks beautiful." "Thank you," I said softly, angling the camera so she could see the shelves lined with my bowls and vases. "It feels like home." She hesitated, then held up a lopsided clay ornament, its edges cracked. "I tried pottery," she admitted with a laugh that trembled. "It's not pretty, but I made it." Something in me softened. "That's what matters," I told her. Compassion without rescue. For once, I didn't feel the pull to fix her life. Her expression grew serious. "Dad's 90 days sober. He asked me to tell you. Mom's been volunteering at the community center." She paused. "They ask about you. Not the way they used to. Different." I nodded, unsure how to process it, but grateful nonetheless. "That's good," I said quietly. We spoke for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. When the call ended, I lingered in the silence, the weight of old grief easing just slightly. Back in the living room, Rachel lifted her glass. "To Amelia," she said, her curls catching the light. "Who builds bridges better than anyone I know, both in work and in life?" Heat rose to my cheeks as everyone echoed the toast. After dessert, I carried the dishes into the kitchen. Jonathan followed, drying plates as I washed. He draped a blanket over my shoulders when we stepped onto the balcony, the night air cool against my skin. The city stretched before us, towers and bridges glowing. Buildings I had helped design stood against the skyline, proof of work that would outlast me. "Deep thoughts?" he asked gently. I leaned into his warmth, eyes fixed on the piggy bank visible through the window, its shape lit by the glow of the room. "Just grateful," I said. "Worth isn't something you earn through usefulness. It's what you refuse to accept." He squeezed my hand, and for a long moment we stood together, watching the lights shimmer on the bay. The piggy bank gleamed through the window, no longer a symbol of neglect, but of a woman who had chosen her own worth and her own family. In the end, Amelia's story is not about punishment, but about discovery. She learned that walking away was not an act of cruelty, but an act of survival. For years she had carried the weight of silence, the ache of being the capable one, the child who was always told she needed less. Only by leaving did she understand that worth is never measured by how much we endure, but by how firmly we refuse to accept diminishment. Family can be both a sanctuary and a prison. It can warm us with love, or cut us with favoritism so sharp it scars the soul. Amelia's parents believed their neglect was harmless, but neglect is its own form of violence. It teaches a child to shrink, to believe that invisibility is normal. Her courage was not in the confrontation alone, but in choosing peace over performance. The photo albums, the bank records, the piggy bank filled with $2 bills, those were symbols, not weapons. They told the story of a daughter who was never truly seen, yet who finally stood tall and demanded visibility. Boundaries became her saving grace. When Lila called for rescue, Amelia answered with compassion, but without surrender. When her parents offered belated gestures, she accepted them without letting them rewrite history. In doing so, she showed us that healing is not about erasing wounds. It is about refusing to let wounds define us. Self-respect is often born in the loneliest hours, at 2 a.m. When she placed the key on the counter, Amelia stepped into a wilderness of uncertainty, but that wilderness gave her back to herself. She found community, love, and the quiet joy of shaping clay into something imperfect but wholly her own. Her story reminds us that honor is not about pleasing others, but about honoring the truth of our own hearts. It shows us that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and reconciliation is never owed. It must be earned. It teaches us that chosen family, built on love and respect, can be stronger than blood alone. The greatest justice came not from her family's downfall, but from her refusal to be diminished any longer. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson, that freedom comes when we stop asking for permission to be valued. So tonight, let Amelia's journey echo in you. Ask yourself where you have been made small and whether it is time to step into your own strength. Remember that worth is not given by others, it is claimed by you. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to walk away in order to finally arrive at yourself. Have you ever experienced this? The moment when you realized your value could no longer be negotiated. If you enjoyed the story, leave the number 1 and subscribe to the Family Fallout Stories to hear the next story.